For a widow faking a pregnancy, my alpha husband struck me across the face. He wanted that bitch to take my place. But I am of noble white wolf lineage. I don't need to grovel at his feet. I severed our bond, reclaimed my white wolf heritage, and returned with my true mate to unleash vengeance. His pack crumbled, his authority shattered. All that remained was endless regret. He lost everything over a lie, and I was reborn. Just moments ago, my alpha husband, Santino, announced that Valentina would be moving into our pack house. Valentina is the widow of the late hero, Marco. She is with child and fragile as a flower. But to bring another woman, and an Omega at that, into our home, it is a deep personal insult. I stood frozen, helplessly watching Valentina seated beside Santino. That is the place of honor. I tried to reach Santino through our mind link, but he shut me out with excuses. In the days that followed, Valentina's belongings were moved into the guest room right next to our bedroom. Every night she would cry about having nightmares, and Santino would spend hours in her room comforting her, while I was left alone in the dark. I buried myself in pack duties, trying to endure it all, until the day I returned to my room and saw my moonstone necklace, carefully placed on the dresser, had been disturbed. It was my mother's only heirloom, passed down for generations. A chill shot through my bones. This was not just an intrusion, it was a declaration of rivalry. In the following days, Valentina spun a tragic tale for the pack. She painted herself as a heartbroken widow, winning everyone's sympathy, especially Santino's. Santino would halt crucial meetings mid-sentence to personally escort her back to her room, all because she claimed she felt unwell during the session. The pack warriors started avoiding me too. Some members looked at me with pity. Others could not even meet my eyes. My position was being weakened. Meanwhile, Valentina glowed brighter than ever. She started wearing vibrant red dresses, my signature color, back before I became Luna and toned myself down to be proper. That imitation, it cut deeper than any insult. Finally, I cornered Santino in his study, trying to talk about the Valentina situation.
Her behavior is inappropriate. She's undermining my authority as Luna.
You're being petty. Your duty is to ensure Valentina's emotional needs are met. Is that clear?
He didn't want to talk. He used the force of an alpha command to restrain my emotions. Betrayal, a kind sharper than any blade, shut down, letting a quiet fury burn through my veins. In those moments, only Damien, a warrior from my father's old god, offered me any solace. As my childhood friend, his support was silent but steadfast. It was the one thing my mate could no longer give me. At the next full moon gathering, Valentina made her boldest move yet. She deliberately tripped, spilling an entire glass of red wine down the front of my beige gown.
Oh, Luna, I am so sorry.
Santino had a servant take me to change, then turned his attention back to Valentina. He barely glanced my way. He was publicly replacing me. This couldn't go on. I looked at my pale reflection in the mirror, and my wolf began to stir. And the very next day, it all exploded. That day, as I walked down the hallway, I heard a crash from our bedroom. My heart lurched. Pushing the door open, I found Valentina seated at my vanity. She was toying with my moonstone necklace, the heirloom of my sacred bloodline.
Put it down.
Then it happened. As if startled, she dramatically flung the necklace into the air. It hit the floor and shattered. I felt my soul tear apart. I dropped to my knees, scrambling helplessly for the pieces. Then Santino arrived. He saw the frightened Valentina and me on my knees. He didn't hesitate. He chose her. He used his alpha's command on me, kneeling there. Shards cut into my palms, drawing blood. Then he turned to comfort the pregnant woman standing above me. I didn't understand why he favored a widow so much, but I didn't need to understand anymore. I swore I would make him regret this day for the rest of his life. My soul, in its despair, cried out to my father, to my white wolf lineage. The stern Damien answered. He could hear it, the roar of the white wolf. And then he saw me collapsed on the floor, with Santino shielding another woman. What Santino felt in that moment wasn't shame, it was rage. Rage that anyone dared challenge his authority. And then, he did the forbidden thing. The act that violated the moon goddess's most sacred law. He unleashed the full force of his alpha power and struck me across the face. To silence me, to force my submission. Yet I remained unaffected. A terrifying calm, accompanied by the blazing white wolf blood, whizzed through my body. I ignored his alpha command as if crushing an ant, then stood up and uttered those devastating words.
I, Alessia Bianchi, reject you, Santino Moretti, as my mate.
Damien supported me, preventing me from falling, while on the other side, Santino collapsed to his knees in agony. His commands held no power over me anymore. And at the same moment, my father's formidable response descended upon our mind link. I knew the tide had turned. The time for vengeance had come. Just as I turned to leave the estate, Santino's mother arrived, clearly still clueless about the situation. She tried to boss me around in her role as mother-in-law. I sneered, announcing Santino's despicable actions to her, then strode out of the Alpha House with my head held high. As the car sped away from Blackstone territory, I felt my power swelling, growing more immense. I was a queen risen from the ashes, about to forge a new kingdom fueled by the fires of revenge. Upon arriving at White Wolf territory, my father was, unsurprisingly, already waiting for us. My father, Marcello Bianchi, the legendary Alpha White Wolf, stood as unshakable as the mountains. He pulled me into his embrace, his arms a fortress, and my humiliation finally melted into resolve and solace.
They will pay in blood and ruin.
Then, he issued a command to the entire pack through the Mind Link. The White Wolf pack would launch a full-scale retaliation against the Blackstone pack that had harmed me. The old she-wolf healer, Lila, gasped as she examined me. My ancient bloodline had fully awakened. In the days that followed, I underwent brutal training with Damien. My bloodline granted me unparalleled talent, and I rapidly transformed into a formidable warrior. And Damien was always there, his gaze filled with unwavering faith and trust. One night, I sat with him and my father in the war room. I told them everything, all the years of repression and humiliation I had endured. Santino's cold indifference, Valentina's manipulations, and that unforgivable act when he finally struck me. My father's face turned ashen. He slammed a fist on the table, vowing to tear Santino's pack apart. But I refused.
Father, this isn't just about revenge, it's about justice. I want him to face judgment, not just a beating.
I was not merely a warrior, but a future ruler. My father seemed pleased by this.
As you wish, my queen. All resources of the White Wolf pack are at your disposal.
I began studying the maps, searching for the Blackstone pack's weakness. And I found it quickly. Their mineral transport and trade routes, their lifeblood. I wouldn't make them bleed. I would make them broke, desperate, and cornered. I would strip Santino of all his authority and dismantle his kingdom without raising a single claw. I ordered our finest spies and strategists assembled. The plan took shape. That night, I climbed to the highest peak of our territory and let out a long, piercing howl. It was a roar of pure power, a declaration that the hunt of Alessia, Queen of the White Wolves, had begun. First, I blocked the mineral transport routes of the Blackstone pack. A silver ore caravan was 3 days late, a vital necessity for their weaponsmiths. Then, I sabotaged their business deals. 2 of their smaller trading partners suddenly canceled contracts over fabricated excuses. Santino didn't suspect me. He thought these were just minor annoyances for the mighty Blackstone pack. But these annoyances wouldn't end. I wouldn't stop. A grain shipment was delayed. A lumber contract was voided. I was dismantling their trade networks, piece by piece. Prices within the Blackstone pack were rising, their economy crumbling. The pack members were grumbling. A council of gray-muzzled elders formed, wolves who'd seen the last generation and knew exactly how bad things were getting. They confronted Santino. All he could offer were pale assurances that he'd handle it. His so-called absolute authority was being questioned. And that's when I struck the decisive blow.
Santino, your pack is withering, just like the love you strangled with your own hands.
The Mind Link was a one-way street. I could speak to him, the cruel privilege of the one who'd done the rejecting. The psychic blow was so sharp, he thrashed along that one-way path, wild and desperate, trying to find me. Still, he blamed my father for it all. He refused to believe the weak Luna he'd discarded had such formidable will and power. He couldn't accept it. Well, I was about to make him see. I deployed our soldiers in large numbers to the border region with the Blackstone pack. They would conduct frequent military exercises here. Santino was forced to respond. He shifted the bulk of his warriors to the border, leaving only a skeleton crew for patrols at home. It was a near impossible strain on their troop deployment. Unlike our high furious morale, a palpable fear began to seep through the Blackstone pack. And it wasn't over yet. A cold smile touched my lips. I hadn't delivered the final blow to my prey. What ultimately shattered the Blackstone pack was a simple truth. I crafted the story of Santino abusing his power to assault his own Luna and spread it through the allied packs. Just the plain, unvarnished retelling was enough. A sharpened arrow aimed straight for his heart. One by one, allies within the alliance terminated their treaties with the Blackstone pack. They were like a severed limb, left isolated in the world. Whispers spread among the pack members. Santino's parents were full of reproach, and even Valentina looked at him with deep suspicion. And he had brought it all upon himself. One afternoon, Damien and I rode out to survey the land that, just a week ago, had belonged to Santino. The sun was brilliant. We talked and laughed, riding side by side, until a glance toward the mountain's base caught him in my sight. Can't blame him. Since leaving him, I was radiant, powerful, more beautiful than ever. I turned my horse away, leaving the beaten dog to his misery. He looked haggard, his eyes filled with disbelief and envy. Meanwhile, Valentina's belly remained round. She had been pregnant for 10 months now. The healer's eyes were full of confusion, and even the pack members most sympathetic to her had begun to whisper. Rumors were already swirling that perhaps this entire pregnancy was a lie. One afternoon, craving fresh air and a moment of peace, I rode to the edge of my shrinking territory. And there, I saw them. On the ridge that had been mine just a week ago, stood Alessia and her gamma. They were riding side by side, surveying the land. She laughed at something he said, her head thrown back, the sun catching in her hair. She looked radiant, powerful, alive, a queen in her own right. The sight was a vision of everything I'd lost. Phantom pain, sharp and deep, lanced through my chest. Where the mate bond had been severed, my wolf snarled, a raw, untamed sound of pure jealousy and regret. She was no longer the pale, quiet woman I'd ignored. She was a phoenix, and I, the fool who'd lit the fire, had watched her rise from my ashes more beautiful than ever. That night, Leo received a secret message from a reliable source. Within the White Wolf Pack, our own healer, Alara. She had met secretly with Alessia's healer. Leo came to me, his face pale.
Alpha, there's a rumor that Valentina is pregnant. It's a lie.
The world tilted. The floor fell away. Was it all a lie? Marco's heir, the nightmares, the so-called sacred duty I'd used to push my mate away. All of it, a fiction? I stared out the window at my pack's failing lands, at the empire my father built and I had broken. A storm was coming, a reckoning, and I was standing right in its path, with nowhere left to run. The evidence was a dagger in the dark. The letter arrived sealed, addressed to my council head, Cassian. It contained a detailed report from a neutral healer of a neighboring pack, outlining the physiological signs of a false pregnancy. The report was objective, irrefutable, and left no doubt it was about Valentina. The elders didn't wait for my consent, they acted on their own. I was in my study, racking my brain over how to pay the warriors' wages from a nearly empty treasury, when I heard the commotion. I stormed out to find 4 senior warriors of my pack half-carrying a stumbling Valentina towards her room.
By order of the council, we are to ascertain the alpha mate's condition.
He announced, his voice full of an authority I dared not question. Within the hour, the truth was laid bare. Valentina was never pregnant. She had used padding and herbs to mimic the symptoms. It was all a lie. The news spread through the pack like a plague. Whispers turned into roars of anger. They had been deceived, their grief for Marco weaponized by the cunning Omega's scheme. And I, their alpha, had been her willing accomplice. My already fragile authority shattered completely. A wave of burning shame hit me, so intense it threatened to consume me. I'd been played for a fool, a complete and utter fool. I barged into Valentina's room. She was backed against the wall, her eyes wide, finally showing a flicker of real fear. The padding was gone, her belly flat and slack.
You lied to me. You lied about everything.
I roared, alpha power flooding my voice, raw and unchecked.
I did all of this for you, Santino. I knew you were unhappy. I wanted to give you a reason to be free.
She cried out, making one last desperate attempt. But the spell was broken. I saw her for what she truly was. A parasite feeding on my grief and my power, draining them both dry. For her, I had lost my mate, my honor, my pack.
Get out.
I roared, pointing at the door. I personally escorted her to the Great Hall, where the pack parted before us, their eyes filled with contempt.
Valentina Rossi is hereby exiled. She is declared a traitor for her deceit. If she dares set foot on Blackstone lands again, her life is forfeit.
I announced it to the silent crowd. She spat at me, her face a mask of pure hatred, twisted into something vicious.
It was her, Alessia. She will be your ruin.
The guards dragged her away, her screams fading into the cold night. As the door slammed shut, a cruel message slid into my mind. It was Alessia's voice, calm and cold as a headstone.
Santino, you finally see the truth. The cost was merely your kingdom.
A phantom pain from the shattered bond hit me, and I staggered. My hand flying to my chest, regret was no longer a feeling. It was a poison, eating through my veins. An image of Alessia's face flashed in my mind. Not the icy queen she was now, but the warm, vibrant woman who had loved me, who had tried so desperately to hold on as I turned my back. They arrived the next morning. Envoys from the White Wolf Pack bearing the banner of Alpha Marcello. They didn't request a meeting, they delivered a summons. Alpha Santino Moretti, former Luna Eleanor Moretti, and Senior Alpha Moretti are summoned to the Pack Square. Queen Alessia Bianchi will deliver her judgment. My parents were frantic. My father tried to negotiate to make concessions. My mother pleaded. But Marcello's envoys were firm, unyielding. All they said was, the queen will decide. We were escorted to the square like prisoners. My pack watched in grim, silent rows. And then she appeared. Alessia rode into the square on a massive white wolf. Her wolf, I realized with a jolt. Flanked by Damien and a contingent of powerful white wolf warriors, their presence screamed overwhelming power. She wasn't in a dress, but in practical leather pants and a tunic, a warrior's attire. A new necklace hung at her throat, forged from the shattered pieces of her mother's moonstone, both fierce and beautiful. She was breathtaking and terrifying. She dismounted, a movement both graceful and predatory, and walked to the center of the square. Her eyes locked on mine, utterly empty. No love, no hate. Just the chilling detachment of a judge.
For your crimes against a mated Luna and an heir of the White Wolf Pack, I render this judgment. The Blackstone Pack will cede its northern territories, including all mines and forests, to the White Wolf Pack. You will also pay 1 million gold marks in reparations for the damages incurred.
Her voice rang out, clear and carrying to every corner of the square. A collective gasp of disbelief rippled through my pack. It was a death sentence. We'd be left with nothing. My pride, the last shred of anything I had left, roared inside me. But when I looked into her cold, resolute eyes, I knew there would be no negotiation.
Furthermore, Santino Moretti will make a public confession. You will admit to your betrayal, your abuse of the Alpha's command, and your assault on your mate. You will confess your crimes before your pack and the Moon Goddess.
No! My mother cried out, but a low growl from one of Marcello's warriors silenced her. My father looked utterly defeated, a broken man. All eyes were on me. I could refuse, I could let my people starve. Or I could swallow the shards of my pride. The weight on my shoulders felt like a mountain. My knees hit the ground. The stone beneath me was cold and unyielding.
I, Santino Moretti, betrayed my mate, Alessia Bianchi. I abused my authority. I struck her.
My voice was a ragged, broken thing. The words burned like poison in my throat. I lowered my head until my forehead touched the dusty ground.
I confessed my sins and begged the Moon Goddess for forgiveness.
I heard a collective gasp ripple through the pack. It was the sound of the last shred of their respect for me dying. I didn't look up, but I felt her leave. I felt the shift in the air as the White Wolf warriors departed. I remained kneeling in the dirt at the center of my broken pack, utterly shattered. The aftermath was a slow, agonizing death for our world. The gold was paid, our coffers emptied. The land was ceded, our resources and dignity stripped bare. The Blackstone Pack, once a power to be reckoned with, was now a hollow shell. Pack members, seeing no future, began to drift away, choosing the perilous life of a rogue over a slow starvation within the pack.
I was still the Alpha, but the title meant nothing. My commands were met with cold, indifferent stares. My very presence was a constant reminder of our former depravity, a source of shame for them all. I started drinking. Only the burn of whiskey could numb the constant gut-wrenching ache in my soul where my mate used to be. The nights were the hardest. I'd find myself walking to the edge of the woods, to the clearing where Alessia and I first met. I could almost smell her scent, wild roses and summer rain. But when I breathed in deep, there was only emptiness. My wolf would whimper, a desolate, lonely sound in the dark. I saw her sometimes from a distance. She was rebuilding the territory she'd taken from me, turning my wasteland into a thriving outpost for her pack. I saw her walking beside Damien, her head tilted close to his ear. Their laughter carried on the wind. It cut deeper than any blade. She was radiant, vibrant, brimming with a power and confidence I'd never seen in her before. The painful truth hit me. I had never truly known her. I had seen only a quiet Luna, blind to the queenly strength simmering beneath her calm. My neglect hadn't just broken her, it had unleashed what was inside. In moments of desperation, I tried to reach for her through our shattered mate bond. Alessia, please. But it was like shouting into a void. No one was there. Only the desperate echo of my own wolf inside me. My parents' whispers followed me through the Alpha house.
He ruined us. He had everything, and he threw it all away.
My mother would murmur this to my father. I was an exile in my own home.
News from the White Wolf Pack trickled in, each piece a fresh stab to the heart. Alessia was revered as the White Wolf Queen. Her judgment was wise, her leadership unquestioned. She was leading her pack into a new golden age. Then came the news about the necklace. A merchant passing through my desolate town told me of the Queen's new emblem, a stunning piece crafted from shattered moonstone, reborn as a symbol of her power. It was a gift from her gamma, Damien. Damien, the one who had mended what I had broken. Jealousy was a physical sickness, a sour burn in my throat. Something inside me snapped. I had to see her. I had to talk to her. I had to make her understand. I left my pack without a word, riding like a man possessed. I crossed territories, ignored borders, driven by a single thought: find her. It was a fool's errand, a mad obsession. My recklessness led me straight into a rogue den. They swarmed me like starving wolves. I fought, but I was exhausted, my spirit broken. They left me in a ditch by the road, bleeding, my body battered. But the pain was nothing compared to the agony in my soul. I was holed up in a cheap inn, licking my wounds when I heard. Damien Costa had formally presented Queen Alessia with a new pack bond, a marriage proposal. He'd knelt before her, before the entire White Wolf Council, and then, somehow, through the tangled web of the pack mind, a stray thought, a psychic echo of the event, reached me. It was the roar of the White Wolf Pack as she accepted. A raw, agonized roar tore from the depths of my throat. Ignoring my injuries, I burst out of the inn and ran. I ran until my lungs burned and my legs gave out, finally collapsing at the border of her territory. I tried to force my way through, but her warriors surrounded me instantly. Disciplined, powerful, they pinned me to the ground. And then she appeared. She walked towards me, Damien at her side. She was wearing the necklace. Moonlight glinted off the reforged shards. She looked down at me, a pathetic animal stuck in the mud, and her eyes held no anger, no pity, nothing.
Santino, you have nothing left. This is the price of your betrayal.
I stared up at the woman who had once been my entire world. The soul I had discarded. She was the queen, he was her king, and I was less than the dirt on her boots. I had lost, forever. The ceremony took place under the full moon, its silver light bathing the clearing in an ethereal glow. I stood before my pack, holding Damien's hand. His touch was a warm, steady anchor, grounding me in this new world. Our healer, Lila, bound our hands together with a cord, woven of silver vines.
By the goddess' will, two souls become one. Two strands merge into a fortress against the storm. A new bond is forged,
Lila chanted, her voice echoing in the solemn silence. I looked at Damien. His expression was steady, loyal, his gaze unwavering. This was not the blazing, destined inferno that had existed between Santino and me. This was something entirely different. It was a bond built on respect, shared values, and a profound understanding. It was solid as bedrock, not a raging fire that could consume everything at any moment. When he marked me, it wasn't about possession, but a pledge of partnership. Our wolves rejoiced, their souls singing in a calm, powerful harmony. After the ceremony, I addressed my people. The power of the White Wolf resonated in my voice. The goddess's law is sacred and inviolable. The covenant between mates is her most precious gift. Any pack that allows such a covenant to be desecrated will cease to exist. From this day forward, the White Wolf Pack will not only be a symbol of strength, but a beacon of justice. We will protect the weak. We will defend the honor of every Luna. We will ensure no one suffers what I have suffered. A roar of approval erupted from my pack. They were not just my warriors, they were my family. News of Santino's fate reached me through my intelligence network. He was escorted back to the ruins of his pack, a king without a kingdom. Under the close watch of my warriors, the Blackstone Pack was forced to restructure. My father, with my permission, formed a new council to govern the pack, stripping the Moretti family of all their hereditary power. Eleanor and the senior elders were forced into retirement, living out quiet, powerless lives. And Valentina? She became a cautionary tale, whispered by pups around campfires. An outcast, a despised rogue. No pack would take her in. She was doomed to wander the most desolate places alone, forever carrying the weight of her own deceit. Time with Damien was a quiet joy, like an undying flame. Our strengths complemented each other perfectly. My vision and raw power, paired with his strategic mind and steadfast patience. Together, we led the White Wolf Pack into an era of prosperity unlike any before. My connection to the forest deepened. I wandered among the ancient trees for hours on end. My wolf finally at peace. I learned to understand their secrets, feeling the pulse of the earth beneath my feet. With Damien's help, we discovered an ancient cave, hidden deep within our territory, its walls covered. Secrets of power lost for generations. A future of discovery and growth stretched out before us. One day, while inspecting a new trade post at the southern border, I saw him. Santino was unloading crates from a wagon, his shoulders slumped, his movements heavy and slow. His hair was unkempt, his face haggard. He looked up, and for a moment, his weary eyes met mine. I felt nothing. The burning rage, the soul-deep agony, it was all gone. All that remained was a calm, detached pity for the man, who had traded an entire world for a handful of lies. He was like a ghost from another life, a story I no longer read. Damien, sensing my gaze, gave my hand a gentle squeeze. I turned and smiled at him, and the past dissolved, like mist in the morning sun. Back in the capital, I drafted my first decree as queen. It was a set of laws that clearly defined the rights of Lunas and Omegas, with severe penalties for any alpha who abused their mate or power. I established sanctuaries for displaced she-wolves and pups. I would forge my pain into a shield to protect others. My journey had brought me back to myself. From the suppressed Luna to the broken mate, to the Queen of Vengeance. Now I was simply Alessia, a leader, a partner, a protector. Watching the young wolves training in the courtyard, the next generation of white wolves, a fierce sense of purpose swelled within me. That night, Damien and I stood on the balcony of our suite, the moon hanging like a silver coin. In the ink-black sky, the bond between us was a warm, steady glow. In the depths of my soul, a calm harbor after the storm. This wasn't an ending. It was a beginning. My beginning? I looked up at the moon goddess, a silent thank you, passing between us. Moonlight washed over my white fur as my wolf surfaced, not from rage or pain, but from pure, unbound freedom. I was no longer a character in someone else's story. I was the author of my own. As I smiled, feeling the strength of my pack, my mate, and my own soul, I knew with absolute certainty the best chapters were yet to be written.